things that just make sense, and they should be a part of the political conversation we have. Not just what a particular political platform is and why you're signing off on this particular guy for the position, but we're taking it back to the basics. We're taking it back to root ideas, then determine the nature and scope of government.
Yeah, and I think this was probably one of the exciting parts of the campaign as well, is that the crowds we got, and the crowds kept getting bigger, they were very diverse. They weren't, the Republican-looking crowd, the businessman that comes out to so many Republican functions. I mean, college campuses, and it was a cross-section. I just would be so excited about it. I said, it just looks to me like freedom is a popular idea. Freedom brings people together. We're not confrontational when we present this message, and it's the Constitution that brings us together. So you can. And we did talk to people who belonged to the Green Party and liberals who cared about civil liberties and a different foreign policy. And then conservatives would at least pay attention to the economics and listen to the whole message. But it really is unifying. I think the best way for the American people to understand this is we do have a pretty good understanding about religious freedom. Sometimes I think we get careless about it, but basically, we have various religions and we are tolerant. I wish at times we'd be more tolerant, but basically that is the case. But we're totally intolerant when it comes to social issues and lifestyles. And when it gets into the category of right and wrong, we have a role to play. We have a role to play as individuals, as parents, and as communities, and we can influence people and we can teach. But when it's dumped in the role of government to say, this is what you have to do with your life, or this is what you have to do with your money, it's one and the same thing. But for some reason, we divided freedom into two pieces, personal freedom and economic freedom, and then we have become divisive. We have the big government people who want to control all the wealth, and too many conservatives want to control our lives, and that's why we're fighting over this. And quite frankly, if we can just take care of ourselves, and if we want to change other people, change them through persuasion or teach our children the way we want them to grow up, that to me is so much better than turning that job over to the government.
Well, the scope and nature of government, you just mentioned that it's likely to grow. We're wondering, do you think we'll see a reversal of the executive office privileges that we've seen in the present administration? Specifically, do you see executive orders and signing statements becoming a thing of the past? Perhaps you could give us a little background on the appropriate use or potential actual abuse of, 1, executive orders, 2, signing statements. Maybe Obama's just a different kind of guy. Maybe he can resist the temptations of power that is outside and above the law.
I think the move toward a strong executive has been going on for 100 years, and neither party has done anything to curtail it, and Obama will like it. He might, issue different executive orders, and he'll repeal some of the executive orders. He'll cancel them out. But he'll use signing statements. If Bush got away with it, he's going to try to get away with it. And any restraint placed on the president should be through the Congress, but the Congress has no stomach for that. And that's the reason ultimately it's up to the people to demand it. But the people are pretty complacent too, and most of them are looking for safety and security, so therefore they're not going to do it. And so the executive branch is going to continue to grow. Executive orders, there's nothing illegal about some executive orders if it's a proper executive function. If our president is given the power to manage the military, which he is, I mean, if he sends out an order, that's called an executive order. He's permitted to do that. But that isn't the way our executive orders have been used. I mean, Clinton could come along and say, well, those 40 million acres out west, you will not use them ever again for drilling, and they'll be off limits. And that's just with an executive order, So many, I would think 90-some% of the executive orders of the many recent administrations have all been illegal.
You're listening to the McAlvany Weekly Commentary at McAlvany.com, McAlvany.com. Well, being in the midst of a financial and economic crisis, we're wondering if this is going to make the 1930s look like child's play. Do you think that Obama is going to use FDR's playbook only on steroids to try to pull us out of the economic crisis? Or do you think now that we're such a debtor nation that that's going to be an unaffordable impossibility?
I mean, he's going to do whatever he thinks is necessary, and he's not bashful about using government and spending and deficit. But how much more can he do? I mean, the story yesterday was that we were asking the question, where did this $2 trillion go that the Federal Reserve created out of thin air and started passing out? And they tell us we don't even have a right to know where it went. I mean, how much worse can it get? But if they're capable, if the dollar holds up for a while longer, if $2 trillion doesn't work, they'll pump in $4 trillion. But the limitation will be by the marketplace. Eventually the market and the world economies will say, so far, we think it's just fine and dandy that you can create all this new money and help bail out people, and we love your dollar. They keep parking their money in the dollar, but that will come to an end. So if Obama comes in, as I suspect he will not only continue at this rate, but even expand it if he can, that eventually it'll be limited because people will lose confidence in the dollar. They've lost confidence in the financial system, but right now there's still a bit of confidence in the dollar that they're leaning on. If that confidence is lost, the ballgame is over.
We've heard some discussion of a Bretton Woods II, some sort of a new currency or monetary regime. And, with global inflation hitting levels in concert, never seen before, is there a possibility in the context of sort of a rewriting of the original Bretton Woods 1944 agreement, that one, the dollar plays second fiddle, is a part of a basket, or actually is completely upset with a variety of alternatives taking its place? No real strong standouts make the A-list, but I think you mentioned we do have confidence in the dollar to some extent today. From a political standpoint, the U.S. foreign policy that we've seen implemented over the last 8 years is despised. No one likes it internationally. And I think, the possibility for an upset of our current currency regime would be welcomed overseas.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I sort of look at it this way. I think they know, those who are in charge, the people who run Wall Street and the people who run Treasury and the Federal Reserve plus the international bankers know that the current system has ended. I think their main goal is to maintain some bit of confidence in the dollar, and everybody's helping to do that because everybody's holding these dollars, but everybody knows that we have to go to a new system. So we did have the Bretton Woods from 44 to 73, and then to 71, and then that broke down. We've had the second Bretton Woods, so-called, up until now. But I think that's over, and now they meet here November 15th and start talking about the next one. But it's not going to be easy for them, but I imagine what they'll pick is a basket of currency. If they overdo the removing of the dollar, that may be too chaotic. I mean, they're treading in dangerous water, I think, because generally speaking, throughout history, to restore confidence into a system, you usually had to have a sound currency. And they're not about to announce that this new reserve currency that they're talking about is all of a sudden going to have a 30% backing by gold or something like that. That's not going to happen. So they're going to have a tough job putting confidence into this. And I don't think anybody, even those who believe they're in charge, can predict exactly what's going to happen.
Well, 1933, we had the FDR administration step in within the 90 to 120 days of office. Assumption, they were confiscating gold in line with the Trading with the Enemy Act. They only ever confiscated about 10% of the outstanding stock. We've always wondered, was that to signal to our foreign creditors that we're okay, just, again, to restore confidence? So let's flesh that out a little bit in terms of how do you sell to the world, not just the U.S., but to the world, a new currency regime that doesn't have anything sound to it. You mentioned the students at the University of Michigan who were saying, end fiat currency, end fiat, and we're burning Federal Reserve notes. It would seem that the king is obviously naked and without clothes to some extent. How can you have a new currency regime without something substantive behind it?
Well, it's rarely done. There was some skepticism about the euro coming into being, even though all the previous currencies that they brought together at one time had been linked to metals. So there was a lingering trust there, but they were able to pull that